Welcome, everyone, to Color Commentary. We are your pauper commentators, Michael Petchik and Adrian Guarzales. How's it going, Adrian?
Oh, good. Happy Easter out there to everybody who celebrates that.
Yep, and happy tax day to those of us who don't, or day after tax day.
And happy day after tax day to those who do and still have taxes. I don't know. I'm just trying to be inclusive here, Mike.
And actually, in the state of Massachusetts, happy Patriots Day to everyone, because we have one of those.
Like the Patriots, like the football team?
No, like the Revolutionary War.
Oh. You just because you're a founding colony, you think special days apply to you. Is that it?
Yep, pretty much. So this week we actually delayed recording on this episode to the weekend because we've got a set review to do. We actually polled the people on our Patreon, which, if you want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/color commentary. But
or
we
if you
polled
want to
the
make
people
sure
there.
if you want to make sure we're never late again, you can join and vote against this in the future. But we told them. Go on.
Yeah, we basically asked if people wanted a set review or if they wanted, us to record the episode Thursday because patrons get access to the show a little bit earlier than the rest of the crowd. But we polled them and they said they wanted a set review. So we're doing a set review this week. So Amonkhet is a pretty cool looking set, rooted in ancient Egypt pretty heavily, and it's got a couple of new and returning abilities. Nothing super out of the usual, but let's cover the abilities first, and then let's get into the actual cards that we want to talk about. So the first one is Embalm. And Embalm always has a cost. It only comes on creatures. And what you do is you pay the Embalm cost, exile the creature card from your graveyard, and then you create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a white zombie in addition to its other types, and it has no mana cost. Embalm only as a sorcery. And this is kind of in the vein of Unearth, from the keyword, not the card, from, what was that, Lara?
Yeah. It was the Grixis ability.
Yeah. So what do you think about this ability as a whole?
I think it's fairly strong. What I really like about this set is that, it's like Alara, each shard has its own keyword. I do like sets like this where there are like 2 or 3 keywords and they're across every single color, and then it changes based on like the color. Embalm is not like that, but I think the other 2 kind of are.
Yeah.
One of them is anyway. But I like the ability a lot.
Yeah. So the ability's cool. They also did a really cool thing in making an entire set of tokens for every single Embalm creature. And they all...
I think I think my only complaints, I don't know if we really got a card that really abuses this ability.
No, I definitely don't think so. And I think they were very careful in its wording, making sure it has no mana cost so that it gets around, devotion shenanigans. And it also, actually, now that I realize it, part of it is just the fact that it makes this awkward like gold token if it doesn't reset its color to white and give it no mana cost. But
right,
and it exiles the creature out of your graveyard. Like they very carefully made sure that this is not something where you can keep doing it. But it is kind of neat because it's kind of flashback for creatures in a way, in the same way Unearth was.
Right.
So the other new ability, why don't you tell people about Exert, Adrian?
Why? I'm kidding. I thought you were making a crack at me there now. Exert is you can exert a creature as it is attacking, and if you do, it does something, and then the creature does not untap next turn. So it's like a one-of like burst of energy, almost like the creature is exerting itself to accomplish the task you've set for it.
Yeah, it's kind of this trade-off of, you only get to use this thing every other turn, but it's more powerful if you choose this mode. And I like the fact that, unlike, for example, something like Unleash, which is another combat-related ability that makes a creature more powerful in one way but less in another, exerting you can choose on a per-turn basis. So, you can save it up until the exert ability makes an attack lethal or something. Or, you can just exert every turn and keep pressure on. Or every other turn, I guess.
I have fond memories of Unleash, but that's back because, like I always reference, Innistrad Ravnica Standard, Rakdos Cackler turn 1, pretty good.
Yeah. And then our last ability is cycling. Cycling always has a cost associated with it, and it's formatted as cycling. You pay the mana cost. Usually, there are a couple that aren't in this set but use non-mana related costs. And you discard the card and you draw a card, and this basically means that the card's never dead.
Sometimes there's an extra ability tacked on there when you cycle do X. Yep. I'm not sure if we got any of those at common this time around, but there are some good ones at common.
I don't think we got any that trigger when you cycle that card, but there are a couple of cards at common that care about when you cycle or discard a card, which is actually really interesting.
Right.
Because, I talked about, hey, maybe we get Astral Slide back, and then immediately Dreams absolutely crushed in an article when some WotC staff member just goes, yeah, we're not putting Astral Slide in this. But
Astral Slide's a cool card. We got Drake Haven, though. That's a good card.
Yeah, it's kind of in the same vein as like Lightning Rift. But without further ado, I think that's, oh, and we also got land type Desert, which we will go into pretty far down in the review because, as always, our cards that we discuss are alphabetized and bicolor. And I'm going to kick things off here with Anointer Priest, which is 1 and a white for a 1/3. Whenever a creature token enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life, and then it has Embalm for 3 and a white. And so this is kind of a Soul Sister effect, but it only triggers on tokens, and I'm pretty sure this is to support a limited archetype that revolves around embalming stuff. But what do you think about this?
I don't hate it. Like you said, there are some Soul Sister applications here. One of the strengths there's a couple different mono white decks. One of them is certainly a tokens build that plays Triplicate Spirits and Raise the Alarm. So I don't think it's completely unplayable. I think it might see fringe play in a fringe archetype as like a 2 of, because at two mana and at a more limited ability, I think it's way less powerful than the original duo. But I don't think it's unplayable.
I mean, I think the trade-off here is that this A is harder to kill, and B, it comes back after you kill it.
Right, and
so it kind of
trigger demands, itself. No, because the Soul Sisters don't trigger themselves.
No. That's right. So this I think this is an interesting trade-off here, because this with 3 toughness, it does kind of require a quote unquote real removal spell, or
right.
It requires your opponent to have a serious threat on their side of the board for it to die during blocks. So I kind of actually really like this. The 1/3 body is not nothing at 2 mana. I don't think this is as good as, say, Augur of Bolas that we just got in Modern Masters 2017, but I think that I don't know. I don't think it's amazing. If it triggered off more than tokens or tokens by both players, I would feel better about it, but I don't know. It's kind of middling.
Yeah, like I said, fringe play in a fringe archetype, perhaps. But I don't absolutely hate it.
All right. You want to take this next one?
Up next, we have Cartouche of Solidarity, which I actually am excited about because I think it could be a cool card. People have been talking about it. It's an enchantment. That's a W for enchantment, or a cartouche, which is a new enchantment subtype. Enchant creature you control. When Cartouche of Solidarity enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white warrior token with vigilance. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 in first strike. So a lot to unpack here. The reason people think it's good is because it slots neatly into the Boggles deck, creates a token to guard against edicts, and gets around flag bearer or standard bearer because it requires you to target a creature you control. So you can negate the standard bearer's ability, which is traditionally a very good card against Boggles. That being said, I don't think the enchantment itself is incredibly strong. First strike is certainly good, but this isn't ethereal armor. This isn't Rancor. It's good, but it's not like the win condition of that deck. You know what I mean?
Well, I think as opposed to those, I think the better comparison here would be Hyena Umbra, which grants +1/+1 in first strike, and it has Totem Armor instead. But notably, Totem Armor does not get around edicts, and this does. I'm not sure how relevant the enchant creature you control chunk of this card is. It was definitely something that I noticed when I first saw this in the spoilers. I was like, huh. So that does get around standard bearer, but the catch is kind of the fact that none of the rest of that deck gets around standard bearer.
Right. So, and this card by itself is not going to be that good.
Yeah, and your opponent is not going to block your 2/2 first strike with their standard bearer. It's kind of an issue there.
I think it's strong, and I think it will see play. I think it's one of the better cartouches, right?
Yeah.
Like the other ones are not as good as this one.
We've got one further down that I do want to talk about, but this is probably the most immediately playable. I would definitely agree on that. Cool. Next up, we've got an example of one of our new ability words, Exert, on Crop Elite, which is 3 and a white for a 2/2 with flying. Not exactly great. But then it has, you may exert Crop Elite as it attacks. If you do, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. So this is kind of neat. It's sort of a repeatable half of a Guardian's Pledge.
Right. And what's the other card you compare it to? Was it called Dawnbringer Eagle?
Yes, Dawnbringer Eagle was in Aether Revolt, and it was like 5 mana for a 3/3 flyer. When it ETBs, other creatures you control get +1/+1 in Vigilance.
So this is a little more of that, but like you said, repeatable. It being a 4-drop 2/2 makes me a little wary. I do know that there was that blue-white flyers deck that took advantage of that card that reduced the cost of your flyers.
Warden of Evo style.
Right. Warden of Evo style. Maybe these two cards can be kind of buddies, because that does seem strong. I know that the blue-white flyers deck is sort of a nascent deck that doesn't really have the tools it needs to be good, but is at least like interesting to think about, you know?
Yeah, and I definitely like this in some sort of like small white creatures strategy because it is a repeatable anthem effect. And, you know, as I was saying earlier, I kind of see this as an exert ability where if you use it, you're probably winning the game, or at least making it so that your opponent has to make some really painful blocks on their end.
Right.
It does lose a bit of the utility that Guardian's Pledge has, though. You know, it's not really a surprise. It's an onboard trick. You can't use it while blocking.
I think I like Pledge a little better. Pledge is +2/+2. I think the real thing about Exert that is going to become more apparent when people play it is that, you know, you have to wait a turn to use it, and then you have to wait another turn to use it. You can only do it every other turn, because the turn this comes down, you're not winning the game, which is true of Guardian's Pledge, right? The turn you cast Guardian's Pledge, you're just going to win most of the time. But with you have to leave it around. It has to live.
Yeah. And it's a pretty fragile body at that. Like, you know, this eats fire bolts, it eats lightning bolts, it eats Galv blasts. Like, there is a lot of stuff in our format that kills this thing. Hell, a Disfigure kills it. And that kind of makes me think it's not great. But it is a cool idea. Yeah. I think at the end of the day, I'd much rather have, you know, the Dawn Feather Eagle effect, or there's a couple of non-flying ones. What are they? Inspiring Captain and Amprin Tactician. And even those aren't good enough to see play. So I did want to talk about this, though, because it is one of the examples of Exert in this set that I think demonstrates the mechanic pretty handily. And at common, which I feel like not a lot of them were. Maybe I'm wrong. I feel like most of the one. I will say this is going to be real sweet and limited. Yes, definitely. Up next, we have Aven Initiate, 3 and a blue for a 3/2 flyer, Bird Warrior. A lot of warriors in this set. Just throwing that out there. A lot of warriors. Yeah, I hadn't noticed that. And it has an Embalm, 6 and a blue, so you get another 3/2 flyer for 6 and a blue. Yeah, I since I tossed all these cards in here, I like this because it's an early game. It's a fairly early game threat, and it's a fairly late game threat as well. You know, if it accidentally gets milled or gets pitched to something, it's not the end of the world. I don't know. I don't hate it. That's a pretty good thing you brought up here. Blue-Black Angler Delver is a deck that self-mills, in order to keep its hand full and to delve away from Angler. But it's not unreasonable to think that some of these Embalm cards might end up in a deck like that, where they want to just go ahead and Embalm for an extra threat in the late game. Once they've run out of Sultai Scavengers or Delvers or Grimlock Anglers, I mean, I know what you mean. Like, it seems like it'd be good if you self-milled it and then you just had a threat in your yard that you could cast at any point. Also, I'm just going to point out, even if you cast this for the front half of it, it feels pretty good against red decks, because if they Pyroblast this, like, sure, they used a 1-mana spell to kill your 4-mana spell, but you do have one that can come back later and can't be Pyroblasted. And I actually kind of really like that as a piece of utility. It's kind of an edge case, ability. Yeah, embalms an ability so it can't get countered, and it comes back as a white creature.
Right. So yeah, gets around stuff. Gets around Sunlance pretty good.
That is certainly true. I also like that the Avens on this plane apparently have ibis heads.
Yeah, dude, it's ancient Egypt.
Yeah, I know. It's just a cool little thing. Next up, we have an inclusion that, we're not going to talk about at length, but I wanted to talk about because I went to art school. Cancel has new art, and it's absolutely awesome. I don't know.
Yeah, this is probably the best cancel art.
It's very Force of Willy. Like it's got this mage with like a blue bubble around themselves, and then fire like being kind of pushed around it. I don't know. I think it's real sweet.
What's cool is this could have been art for a lot of cards. This could have been Hydroblast. This could have been Meddling Mage. Like this could have been a lot of things. The art is very open and it's very blue, but I think you could have put this on a lot of cards.
Yeah, this is strict art upgrade, but Cancel's not dreadfully playable in our format, so end of day, it's not a really big deal, but it sure does look pretty. Also, Cancel's back in standard after not being there for the first, because for a while it was kind of awkward because it has always been in standard since it was printed and then took a year off.
We have that rare Cancel that counters activated abilities as well.
That's true, but we didn't get actual literal Cancel. Right, it's just kind of a staple. You want to take the next one?
Yeah, up next we have a pretty interesting card, Heckma Sentinels, 2 in a blue for a creature, human cleric. Whenever you cycle or discard a card, Heckma Sentinels gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So that's sort of what you were talking about earlier, like a payoff. Oh yeah, it's a 2/3. Sorry, as a payoff for the cycling or even the discard. I don't know that you'll be doing a lot of self discard and pauper with this card at least.
Well, let me hit you with something. How about okay, so compulsive research,
faithless looting, team of battle rage.
Ooh, wow, that seems aggressive. Let me also hit you with this one. What is it called? Wild Mongrel.
Oh yeah, Wild Mongrel. Yeah, like sort of a green blue madness deck that includes this. I had forgotten about madness. And then you can play Logic Knot and Arrogant Worm. Yeah, actually, that deck seems pretty strong.
Yep, and for those wondering, yes, a madness card will trigger this ability because while it has been reworded to go into exile, it still gets discarded. Just gonna nip that one in the bud. I'm trying to think of what other like really solid discard abilities we have. But the one that really clicked for me was Wild Mongrel, and this for like a hell of an alpha strike in some sort of deck that also possibly leverages Flashback or Unearth or Embalm or other abilities where you don't care as much about stuff getting discarded.
I actually really, really like that. I think that'd be a sweet deck, and it'd certainly be a fun deck. And this is right on curve for Wild Mongrel because Wild Mongrel is a 2-drop, and this is a 3-drop, so you're curving out into this. So yeah, I actually do like that idea a lot.
Actually, let me hit you with this. How do you like that? Do you like this in the like blue-green threshold deck that showed up a while ago?
I was just thinking about that as well. Does that deck play a lot of discard outlets? I think it was more of a self-mill.
I think it was more of a self-mill, but if you swap your card draw package around a little bit, I think you could kind of tailor the card draw package to be a little bit more discard heavy, and you might actually yeah. I think maybe
it's also
like this. I really like the option of this and compulsive research because it makes it so compulsive research actually has a reason for you to discard 2 non-lands.
And surprise, the 2 non-lands I'm discarding are Basking Rootwalla. Ayo.
Yeah, I don't hate this idea. It's kind of a neat thing. I don't know. That's what I got.
Brewer's Brew.
Yeah, I would definitely watch out for this showing up in brews coming to, the subreddit real soon. Next up, we've got Hieroglyphic Illumination. And I have definitely seen people play Inspiration in Pauper, and this is a strictly better Inspiration. So
Being
3 and a
an instant
blue.
is so big.
Yeah, 3 and a blue, instant, draw 2 cards. It also has cycling for a blue. So this functionally is a modal spell, right? You either pay the full 4 for draw 2 at instant speed, or you pay a blue, draw a card at instant speed, can't be countered.
Right. And I like this card a lot. The most obvious comparison I can think is actually not in our format. It's Glimmer of Genius, which I unfortunately think will be played over this in standard because you scry 2, draw 2, and get 2 energy. And that's just so much more valuable in our current standard season. But I think this card is extremely good in Pauper. It's not accumulated knowledge or anything, but it's just like a solid card draw spell with 2 modes, like you said. And I think that's good enough.
Yeah, I just like the idea that, 4 mana, turn 4 is sometimes kind of distant, and sometimes, in game 1, you just want to be able to cycle something quickly to get an answer versus like early game, you take this, you cycle it for blue if you have a blue mana sitting up at the end of your opponent's turn. In the late game, though, this is just the front half of Deep Analysis. And I think that's another thing that we should compare this to is, do you play this over Deep Analysis? Because Deep Analysis is a sorcery, but it does have that almighty flashback mode that is really, really good.
Yeah, being an instant is such a big deal because I hate tapping out for Deep Analysis.
Yeah, that is pretty fair because Deep Analysis on the front half always kind of feels like I'm casting the worst Muldrifter of my life.
Right, but this is like you can hold up counterspell. If they don't do anything, you can illuminate some hieroglyphs.
Yeah. All right, you want to take this next one?
Yeah. Next we have Scribe of the Mindful, 2 and a blue for a 2/2, with the ability 1 tap, sacrifice Scribe of the Mindful, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. This card is good. We have Undying Evil to make this very good. We have ways to recur from the graveyard to make it good. Is it better than Archaeomancer? Not 100% sure on that, but it is definitely it belongs in that family of cards, and so I think it should be given some due consideration.
So for me, the first thing that comes to mind is the fact that this is a 2/2. So it's a bit of a pump in stats, and it only requires 1 blue, so it's a little bit more splashable. My big thing is the fact that it's a fragile body and it has to survive a full turn.
You also cannot flicker it.
Yeah. Yeah. You however, that being said, someone pointed out to me that this with Grim Harvest kind of lets you duplicate the 2 mnemonic walls and flicker effect, where you could get this back you can get the Grim Harvest out of your graveyard and then also use this to get something else out of your graveyard after you sacrifice it. That said, I'm going to be honest. I don't think this card's good.
Yeah, I mean, I want it to be good.
I think that this is like a very stealthy trap. It's, I don't know. It's just, it looks, and like on a surface level, it just looks so much like Archaeomancer that I want it to be good. But I think at the end of the day, it just doesn't compare.
Right. The decks that are going to play like Mnemonic Wall are like big mana decks anyway. The decks that want to play Archaeomancer, I don't know. I want it to be good as well, but yeah, I don't know if it's going to be good.
Yeah, I don't know. So, as always, I love to say this during our spoiler episodes. If you can prove me wrong, great. I would love to see another card get pulled into our format at like a playable level.
Hey, how goofy is it that like we have Scrivener and Anarchist, and now we just have Archaeomancer, right? Scrivener and Anarchist are, the red and the blue versions of return instant or sorcery. The red one is Anarchist, returns a sorcery. The blue one is Scrivener, returns an instant. And now we just have one card that does both, and it costs less.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a part of a cycle, right? Like it's Oromancer, which is white and does enchantments. The blue one is Scrivener that gets back your instants. I forget what the black one is. Oh, the black one's Gravedigger. These were printed as a cycle in Odyssey, even though most of them predate the set. They brought back a whole cycle of common things that bring back a card from your graveyard of a specific type.
That's pretty cool.
But yeah, Archaeomancer is definitely one of those ones where folding them both into a blue spell just made it so much better. Next up, we've got a riff on Doom Traveler, which I didn't think I'd be saying. 1 in a black. This is Doom Dissenter. 1 in a black. You get a human. Is a 1/1, and when it dies, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. So this is a very bad Brindle Shoat, I guess.
Yeah, a very bad Brindle Shoat, and honestly, Doom Traveler is better. Doom Traveler is a 1-drop and it creates a flyer.
Well, let me hit you with this. Doom Dissenter you can play a lot easier alongside a Carrion Feeder.
Okay. Yeah, that's true.
Like that was what when I saw this immediately, I was just like, I think that this gets into Aristocrats, maybe. Just because it's 2 bodies for 2 mana.
Yeah, I don't hate that. And it also lets you lean a little bit heavier towards black. But yeah, you have Brindle Shoat already, so this card seems hard to fit.
I feel like this is Brindle Shoat's 5 through 8, but it is nice to have that option there, especially because, you know, Black Green Aristocrats has had some success, but it always kind of remains kind of a tier 2 deck.
Right.
This might also be useful for a couple weeks ago. We reviewed that Black Red Aristocrats brew, and that did not have access to Brindle Shoat or Doom Traveler.
So then this card would be great in that deck, yeah.
And possibly, you know, this might even push enough that we might be able to put together mono black Aristocrats, which I like a lot because the difference between having to play tapped lands and not having to play tapped lands is pretty massive.
Right. I was actually just thinking about a mono black Aristocrats list as well, because all the Aristocrats are black anyway.
Yep.
You know, so why would you not want to play them? Why, yeah, one color is better, is what I'm getting at. And also, like, your finisher spell is Rite of Consumption, which is also a black spell. And then, like, all your removal is black spells. So really, you're just in green for the value creatures. And if the value creatures are in black, why bother? Like you said, and that opens you up to play stuff like Bojuka Bog in your main deck and maybe Baron Moor. I don't know. It seems good.
Yeah, 100%. I think you got the next one.
Yes, it's Festering Mummy, another Aristocrat style card, although not as good as another card we have. It's black for a 1/1. When it dies, you may put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. And the reason I say it's not as good is because outside maybe the Aristocrats list, Fume Spitter sacrifices to itself. That being said, if you sacrifice Fume Spitter to itself, you obviously cannot sack it to your Carrion Feeder. So in that instance, it's probably a little bit better. But it's a functional reprint of Festering Goblin.
Actually, it's better than Festering Goblin because it's a counter and not an until end of turn. And it also is a may, not a must. Whereas Festering Goblin, for example, if your opponent kills a Festering Goblin and you have a 1/1, you don't get the choice to not debuff your own 1/1.
Right. What's the other Festering Goblin?
Shambling Goblin. Shambling Goblin is the one where it still is an until end of turn, but it's a may. So Festering Mummy is just kind of like the peak of that before we get to Fume Spitter. I do like Festering Mummy because it does trade with an X2.
Right, like, because you can block it and give it a -1/-1.
Yeah, before combat damage is, you know, wearing off at end of turn. And I definitely think it's a lot better in Aristocrats than Fume Spitter is. Also, like the art. Just throwing that one out there.
It's very like, yeah, it's very good. It's very like horror movie.
Yeah, very. It's this weird mummy in like dark robes in front of like a purple storm at night, I'm guessing. I don't know. There's a weird plane. There's some stuff going on with death cults, I'm guessing. Next up, we've got a doozy of a card. So strap in on this one while I proceed to go real deep on it. Horror of the Broken Lands. 4 and a black, creature horror, 4/4. Whenever you cycle or discard another card, Horror of the Broken Lands gets +2/+1 until end of turn. Cycling for a black. I don't.
And also looks kind of like Juzam Jin.
It kind of does. I also think that Wizards has never given Tortured Existence decks more of a direct gift than this.
Yeah, man.
So you cycle it turn 1 if you don't have a Tortured Existence to play, or you cycle it at some point. You get it back with Tortured Existence. And then that little loop that a lot of Tortex players love, where you just cycle a Golgari Brown Scale in and out of your graveyard to gain a bunch of life, is also making this thing gigantic, right? So by the time you can cast this, you already have 5 mana, and let's assume a decent chunk of that is black. This thing could be attacking its first turn as like a 10-7.
Yeah, he's a big boy. I think you're definitely right, because one of the problems with the Tortex list is they don't really have a way to finish the game. And so if they just had one creature where when the board is clear, they've got their card advantage engine online, and they can just do their loop X number of times during their turn, and then just attack you with a big beater. I think that's going to be pretty strong. Those decks sometimes run Gurmag Angler. I don't know if that's actually better or not, because they have to double away some of their stuff, but I do definitely like this one because I think it has the potential to one-shot your opponent.
Yeah, I think personally, like part of the reason that Gurmag Angler always struck me as a little unintuitive is it does require, like, it's a very bad target to get back with Tortured Existence, because it kind of prices you into having, say, a what is the card I'm thinking of? The Imp.
Stinkweed Imp.
Stinkweed Imp. It kind of prices you into having something like that where you can mill very efficiently, and then you start running into the problem of actually decking yourself. Whereas Horde just kind of says, all right, get me into play, have a Tortured Existence online, and then just go nuts, dude. Like,
yeah.
Also, it makes, for example, again, I'm going to blank on this, Grave Scrabbler. Grave Scrabbler feels pretty nice with this dude. Gets him back. Also lets you madness him into play. Like, I don't know. I personally really like this, and I think Tortex is, an okay deck. I think this is a hell of a finisher in that list.
I think what's also great about it is it cycles.
Yeah, especially, like, you're playing a deck with a bunch of recursion in it. Like, there's very little downside to cycling this thing if you're just going to get it back later in the game.
Right. It's a good card.
Yeah.
It's actually probably the best ones we've talked about.
Probably.
Just in terms of possibilities.
Yeah, definitely.
Up next, we have Supernatural Stamina B for an instant. Until end of turn, target creature gets +2/+0 and gains when this creature dies. Return to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. So it's kind of like Regeneration, but it's better, right? Because you get an ETB effect when the creature comes back.
Yeah, this is it's really strange to see an effect that is almost word for word regeneration, because I'm still not used to that being something that they don't do anymore. So obvious comparison here. Let's get it out of the way. Undying Evil.
Right. Which is probably the better card. But because I don't think you want this and Undying Evil. And the only way Undying Evil is bad is if you have another Undying Evil you want to use on the same creature, right?
Well, that's what I was going to say. The trade-offs here, Supernatural Stamina gives you a temporary pump. So, you're more likely to use it in combat, I feel, where, you're attacking in, your opponent blocks with a thing, you Supernatural Stamina something, it trades and comes back. It also doesn't let you keep the creature you target with Supernatural Stamina up as a blocker. Whereas Undying Evil, that lets you keep up your blocker. It gives you a permanent boost, but you can't really chain them together.
Okay.
Let me hit you with this. Is the right answer, like, let's say you're a deck running 4 Undying Evil, is the right answer now 2 Undying Evil, 2 Supernatural Stamina? Just because if your thing already has a counter on it, supernatural stamina will get it back.
Right. I don't know. The only deck that I play Undying Evil in is Pig Trinket, and I think I prefer Undying Evil in that deck.
That's fair. I don't know. Just an interesting kind of combat trick / recursion card that I think at 1 black, I think if it was any more, I would not be talking about this. But the fact that it's a 1-drop and it's an instant just makes it really, really nice.
Right. No, it's definitely an interesting card. It's definitely a good card. It's going to be great in limited because it's going to be kill your dude, my dude, dies, but actually comes back and I get another ETB effect. So it's going to be a strong card. Whether or not it's strong in the format remains to be seen. Because even if you do play some Old Drifter, it's like Undying Evil, like you said, and you just draw 4 cards. So that combo is fun.
Yeah. Next up, we've got a new version of Elic Trickery, I guess. Blazing Volley, 1 red, sorcery, deals 1 damage to each creature your opponents control. So it's a mana cheaper, but it's a sorcery. Thoughts?
Trade-offs. We got them. I like it. I mean, it's trade-off. I like it better in some situations and less in others. In the turns, in the decks where Elic Trickery is better, like elves or tokens, I would rather have the Elic Trickery because you can the extra mana doesn't matter as much. You can probably get more of their board if you wait a turn anyway. But Blazing Volley is better versus Boggles, especially if you are on the play or on the draw, I guess, because if they go like Boggle and they don't have like an enchantment, very rare situation, I know, and you can Blazing Volley, then you can get them a turn earlier, whereas Elic Trickery, you have to have 2 mana in order to get their stuff off the table. So I don't know. I guess in Elic Trickery, though, you can do in response to the auras, which is better. This just seems situationally like it might be better sometimes, but I think as a whole, I prefer Elic Trickery because it's an instant.
Yeah, this was one that I kind of included just because I felt we had to talk about it because it does replicate a very powerful sideboard card in a slightly different way. And it's kind of neat to see that we actually it's always nice when we get a version of a card that we already have in the format that actually has a reason to discuss it, because they could very easily have printed this at 1 and a red and then we wouldn't be having this conversation at all. But now we have this conversation of is being able to hit this for 1 mana less actually worth limiting the times where we can play it?
Right.
For what it's worth, I think no. I think this is
sorcery is a hard sell.
Yeah.
Next up, as it is want to be.
Yeah. Next up, we got another reprint with sweet art.
Magma Spray.
Yep.
Red. Deals 2 damage to target creature. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. Ashes can't be embalmed. Very true. This card's going to be good in limited and standard because it will mean that you cannot embalm the creature. So very true to its flavor text.
Yep. Just seems like an absolute house in limited. Perennially used in Tron decks and other red controlier decks. It's a sweet card. There's no 2 ways about that.
Right.
Next up, we've got Thresher Lizard, which is 2 and a red for a 3/2 creature lizard. It gets +1/+2 as long as you have 1 or fewer cards in hand. So how do you like 3 mana 4/4s, Adrian?
Hate them. Affinity has 2 mana and free 4/4s. I don't know why you would play this card. Even in your red deck, wins deck, I feel like you want to be setting up Burning Tree Emissary chains so that you can maximize your haste and your damage potential. And I just think a 3 mana 4/4 is not really where any one of those aggressive decks really wants to be. If they wanted to do that, they could just play Mog Flunkies, which would probably be better even with the restriction.
So let me hit you with this, though. One of the sort of the red deck wins issues is, what do you do if you wind up in the late game and you don't have any good top decks? You're drawing into lands. This thing stays active as a 4/4 with no restriction on whether it can attack or block, as long as you can continue to, play cards out. I think it's, maybe a 1, maybe 2 of, but I actually really like this in the red deck win sort of thing. It's not flashy. It's not impressive. It doesn't have a fancy ETB trigger, but it sure does provide you an efficient mana to body ratio if you can keep your hand pretty light.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I can see that. Let's go to the next one.
Yeah.
Benefaction of Ronus. 2 and a green. Sorcery. Reveal the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a creature card and or an enchantment card from among them into your hand. Put the rest into your graveyard. So we have a new Commune with the Gods, 1 mana extra, but you get 2 things. Good?
You get potentially 2 things.
Yeah, and or. But you could get 2 things. You could get a Tortex, for instance.
So I've seen people talk about this in Tortex, and I kind of like it better in Boggles. I mean, 3 mana is a bit of a stretch for them some games, but
I see. Yeah.
I think just being able to, like, okay, you top deck this and your opponents manage to clear off your board, going this into a Boggle and an enchantment to slap on it, I kind of like.
It's good. No, I like that too. I think really, like, the first time I read this, I was like, oh, that's not as good as Commune. But then I realized you get 2 things, or the potential to get 2 things. And I was like, that makes it, probably much better, honestly, because you can be less choosy, so I like it.
Yeah. I mean, compare with, say, what do you call it? Forbidden Alchemy. Like,
yeah.
Forbidden Alchemy looks at the top 4 instead of the top 5, and you only get 1 of them. Now, sure, I am comparing apples to oranges before people take to the comments section, but this is a pretty good effect for green at common.
I think it's more Tangelos to oranges.
There you go.
Because, yeah, they're not the same, but they are flavors of the same effect, and in a color that doesn't have access to that effect, I think, like, it's good.
Yeah. Next up, I did promise you would talk about more cartouches. 2 and a green, Cartouche of Strength. Enchantment or a cartouche, enchant creature you control. When Cartouche of Strength enters the battlefield, you may have enchanted creature fight target creature an opponent controls. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has trample. I just noticed, literally as we were recording, there's a very good reason for this one to have enchant creature you control, so you don't just slap it on your opponent's creatures and use it as 2 green, kill your opponent's 2 biggest things.
Yeah.
But
I think the fight.
Yeah.
The fight is interesting. If you put it on a creature that already has, like, Armadillo Cloak on it, that seems like big game. Kill your dude, gain 15 life, attack for 15. I don't know. That seems strong. Rancor, it ain't, but I mean, I could see this as a 1 or a 2 of in a Boggles deck. Simply because it's a removal spell in a deck that doesn't have removal spells.
And at that, it is a main deckable removal spell for them because, right. I don't think Boggles can have the liability of, drawing into a Prey Upon or a Hunt the Weak in the middle of the game. Whereas this, it's still advancing your main game plan. It's also killing something. And if you have enough first strike providing auras, this is just removal.
Right. And this is also, it also gives trample, so nothing to sneeze at there. Trample is, that deck's bread and butter. That's why Rancor is so good. Rancor would not be as good as it is if it only gave +2/+0. The trample is really the big game there. And yeah, I just think that deck has so many enchantments that give trample already, but I think every time they get it, it's, not a big, like, it's fine. What if you're doing, like, turn 1 Boggle, turn 2 Ethereal Armor, turn 3 this? Yeah, that seems fine. That seems great.
Yeah. I don't know. I think this is kind of a 1 or 2 of that you play as a top end, and that's about it. But it's still, like, pretty powerful. Just being able to main deck removal and Boggles, a deck that, sometimes just needs to be able to get through. One of the kind of interesting things, though, is it removes a blocker, but then it also gives trample, so it would have gotten past the blocker anyway. But I don't know. Maybe they have something that trades with you,
right?
Because this will, put you above the trade point, kill the other thing, and not leave you open to, I don't know, like, any, like, trickery. Like, if the +1/+1 really matters in that fight, it's gonna matter more.
Right.
That's my thoughts on this thing.
It's a good card. It's going to see play. Next, we have another aura. And Mike, guess what?
What?
I've got 2 tickets. Do you know where to?
To paradise?
To paradise, yeah. So the next card is Gift of Paradise. Tune a green, enchant land. When Gift of Paradise enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life. Enchanted land has tap. Add 2 mana of any 1 color to your mana pool. So that seems sweet. It's like Wild Growth, but not as good because Wild Growth, I think, just happens when you tap, whereas this actually gives the ability you tap the land to add 2 mana of any 1 color to your mana pool. Or is that how all those work?
I believe Wild Growth is actually an addition. This is a riff on stuff like Sheltered Airy, and things of that nature. So this goes into the creature, quote unquote creatureless version of Freed from the Real, and also I believe the arcane combo deck that is sometimes referred to as Petal Festival, which I fully hate as a name.
It doesn't play Lotus Petal.
Yeah, it doesn't play Lotus Petal. It plays Petals of Insight, and it really bothers me.
And Harvest Festival. What would you call that deck, Mike?
I would call it Arcane Combo because like 30 cards out of 60 have the word arcane on them. But that's just
Petal
me.
Festival. Petal Festival sounds cool. You know what? This isn't a conversation for now. The point is Gift of Paradise is there for those tier 3 non-interactive combo decks.
Yep, and it gains 3 life, which does a good job making sure that your opponent's attempts to interact with you are less effective. All right.
Let's go to our next one. May his path be great.
Yes, the next card, the Mighty Shai Halud. So this is Greater Sandworm, 5 green, 7/7, can't be blocked by creatures power 2 or less, cycling for 2. This card is not pauper playable. I just wanted to talk about it. I deeply love Dune.
We'll get into that in a second. Oh no, I guess we'll get into it now.
Yeah,
I think it's fine.
You think it's fine? And expound upon that.
Well, Mono Green Tron is a deck, and Pulse Marasa is a card. You could theoretically cycle this early game and use it as a finisher in the late.
Wow. This podcast has changed you, man. I would not have expected those words to come out of your mouth like when we first started up. This is entirely outside of the things that you like doing, but you're kind of right.
I mean, I guess at that point, why aren't you just playing Ulamog's Crusher? But you know what? Damn it, I want me some Melange.
Let me hit you with this. Ulamog's Crusher can get chump blocked for days by like Boros tokens. This
but they're
can't.
Losing 2 permanents though.
Losing 2 permanents is big game. That is completely fair. That said, most of the mono green Tron decks kind of have some flex slots for like the role of like big nasty thing that's going to bash your face in. Now that you've brought it up, I don't hate Greater Sandworm in that slot. Like a pseudo form of evasion and a level of utility if you really need to draw cards. I don't think this is as bad as I thought it was.
Adrian saves the day.
Adrian does certainly save the day. But in all reality, I put this on here because I love Frank Herbert's Dune, and it's sweet that we got Sandworms. I did actually, I don't know if you saw this. There was a fake spoiler with this art because the art had already been released. Yeah. There was someone who mocked up a fake version of this where it was like an 8 mana mythic 2020 with no abilities. Because
it would be terrible if that were true.
It would be terrible. I mean, Fling's in the standard format, but it's also I believe there was a while back Mark Rosewater talked about like doing a vanilla mythic, so that was why people thought it might be real, but they've printed worse cards before.
Yeah.
All right, you want to surprise us with this next one?
Yeah, next we got Tuna Green for a creature who waits in the shadows, and before you know it, pounce. It's pouncing cheetah. It's a 3/2 with flash for 2 and a green. So it's essentially Ambush Viper. I don't think Ambush Viper is a common though. Maybe it is.
Ambush Viper is most definitely a common, my friend.
Whoops doodle. The point is, it's a 3/2 flash green creature. Flash is not typically a green ability, I guess, outside of Ambush Viper. But I don't know. It's cool. Flash creatures are cool. You can tutor them with mystical teachings. Believe it or don't. Do not think this card will be seeing play in mystical teachings, but I do like me some some flash creatures.
Yeah, and sometimes we include things in these set reviews specifically to tell you, please don't try this. It's a bad idea. And in this case, it's please don't put this in teachings. It's a bad idea.
Or is it? No,
That body's just a little too fragile for any sort of control finisher. Moving onwards, we got another, man, Wizards keeps a lot of the stuff that we get is very sideboard playable. I don't know if you've noticed that, but we keep getting weird hate cards. And in this case, it's Stinging Shot. Green, instant, put 3 -1/-1 counters on target creature with flying, cycling 2. So right now, if you're in green, you're generally going to go with Scattershot Archers or Aerial Volley. That's the other one. Sorry. Having a real tough time remembering card names today.
I don't think it actually plays it.
Yes, there's also Takedown. So Stinging Shot I wanted to talk about because all of those cards except Takedown cannot deal with Spire Golem. And
right, and this does because you make it an 0/1.
Yep. I mean, obviously, Aerial Volley can get your opponent if they decide, hey, I'm just going to, eat your 2/2 with my Spire Golem when it swings in. And instead you go, oh, got this card for you. And Stinging Shot it kills everything in Delver. That is a plus. Except for Spire Golem, which it kind of neuters to the point where it's not really a problem anymore. It's going to be a chump blocker, but if you're in green, you probably have some stuff with Trample or Trample granting enchantments, say a Rancor. I don't know. Any other thoughts?
I think it's good. I think the only hole in that plan is if they ninjutsu it back to their hand, which they certainly can still do. I think you still want to use it judiciously in the fact that you want to make sure you're killing the Spire Golem instead of just making it an 0/1 because Ninja will ruin that plan.
That is very fair and something I had not really thought on enough. True.
And I actually do like Aerial Volley and Scattershots better still because they kill multiple creatures, whereas this will only kill one. So that is something else to take into account, even though those other cards don't deal with Spire Golem.
Yep, that totally fair.
Yeah.
Are you ready to go into the desert?
Yep, let's go. We got Cradle of the Accursed. It is a land desert, which is a new subtype of land that Wizards has brought out. And I think actual desert was the subtype desert. So correct me if I'm wrong there. So it's not like a new thing, but for 20 years it has been the only desert, and now there are new deserts.
Well, walk us through. I'm gonna check that for you while you tell us what this card does.
This card is a land desert. It taps to add colorless to your mana pool for 3 generic and a tap. Sacrifice Cradle of the Accursed. Create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. I don't think this card is very good. Mike and I have talked at length about man lands in the format, but I think the thing you want the least when you're trying to think of man lands is a land that dies to make, creature lands. I apologize for that. So that's a old conditioning on my part, so I do apologize. The creature lands, the last thing you want from the creature land is for it to die to make the creature. You want it to be able to be a creature when you need it and a land when you don't. So I don't think it fits that requirement for the creature lands.
Yeah, you hit a lot of the points I was going to hit. I did look it up. Actually, the original desert is a desert. It does have the subtype desert. I believe that was added to make some clarity in terms of stuff with protection from deserts.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, you pretty much hit the nail on the head. This is not a creature land. I know it looks like it, and I know that Tilling Treefolk is in this format, and that's still not good.
No, I just don't think that that's where you want to be.
The fact that this can only be activated as a sorcery is really a bummer. I would maybe be talking a little bit more if this could be cast. It could be activated as an instant. But even then, like turning functionally 4 mana into a 2/2 zombie is a bad raid. I don't know. People are going to try this as a win con. Someone is probably going to eke out a 5-0 with it, and we're going to have to hear about it for months. But I'm going to I'm going to hit you with this. This card is bad. This card is like maybe limited playable.
Even a stop clock is right twice a day.
You know what? That's solid wisdom.
Hey, platitudes. So sort of tangential, but I do want to tell it. Me and this buddy at work, we had this discussion once. What if you had a manager who only ruled through platitudes? And so every time we pass each other, we were like, "Oh yeah, having a tough day. Life's a garden. Dig it." And just stuff like that. It's really, really funny, and I feel compelled to share that with our audience and to bring it onto the show now.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was a good little segue. Next up, we've got a reprint, Evolving Wilds. So Evolving Wilds format, occasional staple. Where in your mind does this Evolving Wilds art rank? Because it's obviously below the F&M promo. The F&M promo is the tier 1 Evolving Wilds, cannot probably likely be beat in our lifetimes. Where does this one fall?
I like the dragons one. I like the alternate art dragons one. I hate the one with the trees getting ripped apart. I would say this is actually pretty high on the list. We've got a couple of ones that are cool, but not really that great. I would probably put it maybe in the same spot as the dragons ones, which I think are my second favorite ones. Because the one of them is that volcano and it looks super duper dope. The other is like that oasis in the desert, also dope. But I actually like the Rise of the Eldrazi one, not the Rise of the Eldrazi, but the new one too. I don't know. There's actually a lot of good evolving art.
The BFZ, the one where it's like water with like a forest like growing through it.
Yeah, and they're all pretty good. I like this one a lot.
Yeah,
all that being said, though,
I'm a really big fan of this one. I'm actually not a fan of either the Dragons or the Dragons promo one, which I know a lot of people disagree with me on. I'm actually a big fan of the Dark Ascension one. The weird
that
castle.
One's bad.
Oh,
I don't like that one.
But actually, it's kind of a bummer. I love this, and I kind of want it in foil for my Peasant Cube. But I actually have a heavily miscut Evolving Wilds that I could never bear to like remove from the cube because it's just too weird.
Yeah,
but this is
your hobbies.
This for me is like right below the F&M promo. Personally, I'm a big.
I mean, it's pretty good. It's very evocative of Dust Bowl, which is an older card, which I do like also.
All right, do you want to take our last like pseudo reprint?
Yeah. The next card is actually one I'm personally excited for to pimp out my foils. It's Painted Bluffs. It's tap, add colors to your mana pool, 1 and tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So it's Unknown Shores and what's the other one called?
Shimmering Grotto.
Pool? Shimmering Grotto, thank you. I like this one the best. I had in the past run Theros Unknown Shores because I really like those giant seashells. But this one is probably going to replace that because it's this beautiful purplish like desert.
This is area. going to be gorgeous in foil. This is going to be so shiny.
Yeah, it's colors I like. It's a vista I like. I'm probably going to get 4 foils of it just for my Tron lists or my decks that want that filter ability, and I'm probably going to get 4 of them on Moto just because I like the art so much. So yeah, I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, it does have the land type desert. So if we get something that cares about deserts in the next set at pauper rarity, like this could be this could potentially be a relevant thing. And honestly, if we got some sort of like tutor effect for a desert that was moderately costed, some Tron lists might want it just so that they can tutor into fixing without having to blow like an expedition map or a better card, right?
And it's just that uncommon, so we're not going to get to play it.
Oh, let's sidetrack for a moment. Did you realize that card is just a weird Krosan Tusker?
Yes.
Yeah,
I did think about it.
They printed a 6/5 for 7 that cycles, gets you a basic or a desert. I thought that was kind of neat. Yeah,
I did too, and I would have loved to have played that in Pauper, but unfortunately, like I said, it isn't uncommon. Because then we would have so much more utility from that Krosan Tusker ability. So it'd be cool.
All right. Last on our list. And this is another one where I'm going to have some opinions that I feel a lot of people are not going to care for.
It's also a moderate reprint.
Yes, it is kind of a reprint. Sunscorched Desert. Land, desert. When Sunscorched Desert enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to target player. Tap, add colorless to your mana pool. So this is kind of Piranha Marsh. Piranha Marsh is a black land that ETB's tapped and each opponent loses a life. Or I think it's target player loses 1 life. Please, for the love of all that I hold holy in this format, this is not a win con with Ghostly Flicker. Please.
No, it's really not. It just, I mean, it seems so good on paper, but there just isn't a turn where you're going to be able to do, 10 damage to your opponent, right? Like you're going to have to slowly bleed him over the course of several turns. And at that point, I feel like you could just cast Rolling Thunder, or you could do anything, like you can just do anything else. But this, like, not only does it take forever, but like it's going to eat up your clock on Moto, and it's going to give your opponent a pretty large window in which to win the game. And this is even provided they don't have any life gain in their deck. Every time they play a gain land, they're undoing one of your flicker loops with this card.
Now, I will say, in that deck, you're probably playing either black or red for removal. And, if they can have a clear path for that Archaeomancer, they can get in for 2 a turn. That said, please don't be the person who insists on forcing this as a win con. Just
it's going to be in a 5-0 list. You'll have to hear about it for months, Mike.
Yeah, please. This is your PSA. This is your Uncle Mike sitting here. Play a real win con. Don't try and prove that you can win with subpar cards just for the hell of it. Just play a good win.
Now people are going to do it because you challenged them, Mike, you fool.
Yeah.
You should have said this card is great and the next tier 1 deck list will play it, and then no one would play it.
No, they would still play it because there are, believe it or not, people out there who take our opinions seriously.
Oh, well, they shouldn't do that. That's a terrible idea.
All right. So all in all, this set, what are your thoughts on it?
C+.
Yeah.
Passable. Some interesting stuff. Nothing groundbreaking. Nothing I love. I don't know. It's tough.
That's pretty fair. I feel like C+ is right about where I am on this as well. Just kind of advancing the state of things. There's a handful of things that I think are really neat, and I'm really glad that they saw print at Common. The Black Horror, I think, the Horror of the Broken Lands, I think actually makes Tordex a much, much better deck.
I think that's probably my favorite card from the set as well.
I've spoken to I guess famed Tordex player 8686 about this. He thinks it's a good card. That man has more 5-0s in Tordex than most other players who are still active.
He probably has more 5-0s in Tordex than I have 5-0s. So he's a good player. He knows what he's talking about. I would definitely defer to his opinion on it. So the fact that he thinks it's good makes me think it's probably pretty freaking good.
Yeah. I think all in all, pretty solid set. It's better than, say, Aether Revolt, where we, like, over the course of Aether Revolt's release up until Modern Masters 3, I think there was 1 card that 5-0'd from that set, and it was that terrible, like, ping your opponent for 1 artifact that you can pop for a red to ping them for 1 again and draw a card.
Oh, yeah. See, that was a win con that people are trying to play. Sunscorched Desert isn't that different, guys. It's not that different. It's the same thing. I mean, it's free, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, I think we've also been especially spoiled because the Modern Masters 3 set was so good to the format. That set, like, look at the top 4 decks right now in Goldfish. Like, they're different. They're way different than they were, like, right before. So it really shook up the meta, and a lot of really good cards got downshifted, and so I think we got really spoiled. But yeah, this set is not going to really do too much for the format that hasn't already happened.
Yeah, I think I've talked about it on the show before. I have a spreadsheet where I keep a running list of cards that 5-0'd and when they were first released, and most NWO New World Order design sets, we're getting like 3 to 5 new commons that actually make their way into at least 1 5-0 list. And that's a pretty low bar to pass. And I think this is going to be another one where we see maybe 3 to 5 of these cards. and we just kind of get par for the course. And I'm not upset about that. Like, Wizards is not catering to us, and the mere fact that we've managed to, have an hour plus long discussion about this set, I think means that there's still some interesting design, and they're exploring a little bit more interesting design space at Common.
Yeah, good for you, Wizards. I mean, that's the thing too, is like you said, like these deserts are pretty cool effects, and they're effects we didn't really have in the format. I mean, we kind of had a thing that made creatures, I think, but I don't know. It's just interesting design space, like you said, and I hope they keep pushing the envelope, and I hope they keep trying, because even when Wizards fails, if Wizards tries and fails, I'm still happy they tried. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Also, Adrian, the most important question. I don't know how closely you've looked, but where does Amonkhet rate in the sexiest plane of the multiverse contest?
It's actually, I mean, I know I noticed. It's actually kind of high. I would put it, maybe it would go Ravnica, Innistrad, Kaladesh, and then Amonkhet.
Okay. Strong words of praise from resident attractiveness rater.
Resident pageant organizer, Adrian Gonzalez. But I mean, Ravnica, nothing can beat Ravnica.
That's fair. I know your feelings on the matter. That said, I did not prepare a main deck sideboard unplayable for this week, just so the show didn't run absolutely forever. I can assure you it will return, as it has, despite all reason, become a fan favorite. So
flies in the face of logic.
You want to take us out here?
On a date? No, out of the show. I love making that joke. Thanks for joining us today. This podcast is brought to you by the support of our Patreons. Consider supporting us if you like the show. Patreon.com/color commentary. Check below this video or the description of this podcast for details on where to find us. We'd like to remind you that if you're listening to this on a platform with reviews, they're always appreciated because they boost our visibility. If you've got a deck list or an idea for a topic, feel free to contact us either via our website or by emailing us directly at colorcommentary@gmail.com. Alternatively, if you become a patron, you'll be able to make us look at your deck list because we don't really have a choice when people are giving us money. Special thanks to Pat's Games and L. Until next time, this is Adrian and Mike. We are signing off for Color Commentary.